Commander Maya Rodriguez sat in the observer section of the great space station called Celestial Harmony. The massive station floated in space around the neutral world of Kepler. Prime. The station served as meeting ground for the 12 most powerful alien races in the galaxy. Maya looked around at the incredible sight before her. 3 human women sat among beings that seemed to come from fantasy stories. There were tall crystal creatures that sparkled like diamonds. There were elegant space elves with silver hair and purple eyes. There were large lizard people with scales that changed colors. And there were insect creatures with multiple eyes and hard-shell Bodis. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park sat next to Maya, checking data on her small computer. Lisa was a scientist who studied alien life forms. She had spent years learning about dangerous creatures on frontier worlds. Dr. Rachel Stone sat on the other side. She studied how different species think and behave. Rachel had worked on hostile planets, where most other species could not survive. This was the first time humans had been invited to watch the Apex Predator Classification Summit. The summit happened every year, where the galaxy's most powerful species decided which creatures were the most dangerous. Maya felt excited but also nervous. They were representing all of humanity at this important meeting. High Arbiter Zalandra stood at the center of the Great Hall. Her crystal body was 3 meters tall and glowed with inner light. She had ruled galactic politics for thousands of years. Her voice sounded like musical chimes. When she spoke, beside her stood Huntress Lirelei from the space elf people called the Astery. Lirelei was beautiful in an otherworldly way. Her silver hair moved like liquid starlight. Her violet eyes held the wisdom of someone who had lived for centuries. The Astery were known across the galaxy as master warriors and brilliant strategists. Battle Matron Crixter represented the reptilian hegemony. She was nearly 3 meters tall, covered in green and gold scales that shifted colors with her emotions. Her people were born warriors with natural weapons built into their body swarm. Queen Vashti spoke for the insectoid collective. Her black shell body reflected the station lights. Her compound eyes could see in all directions at once. Her people shared a group mind that connected millions of individuals. The summit began with Salandra showing a massive holographic display. The display showed the official Galactic Threat Assessment Matrix. This was a complete list of the most dangerous predator species in known space. The list included creatures that could hunt in the vacuum of space, creatures that fed on pure energy, and monsters from other dimensions. Shalandra's crystal voice rang through the chamber. For 2,000 years this classification has kept peace in the galaxy by knowing which creatures are apex predators. We can respect their territories and avoid. Morse Laurel nodded with graceful agreement. The Astri have faced many of these creatures in our 10,000-year history. Each one represents perfect evolution for killing in their environment. Maya listened carefully as the presentation continued. She noticed something that made her feel confused. Humanity was not on the list anywhere. Not in the top rankings, not in the middle sections, not even at the bottom. Maya looked at Lisa and Rachel. She could see the same confusion in their faces. When the formal presentation ended, Maya stood up and asked for permission to speak. The alien delegates looked at her with mild curiosity. Most seemed to think humans were amusing, but not very important. Maya spoke with military precision. Honored delegates, I notice humanity is not included in your classification system. We have achieved faster than light travel, and were invited to observe these meetings. I am curious about how you assessed our species. A wave of what sounded like alien laughter passed through the hall. Crixta's scales turned bright yellow, which meant amusement in her species. Several insect representatives made clicking sounds that served as their version of Chucklin's Landris. Crystal body brightened with gentle amusement. Young human, your species has accomplished space travel, which is impressive for such a new addition to galactic civilization. However, the apex predator classification is for species with significant advantages in combat, survival, or hunting. She gestured 2 holographic images of various alien species. Your people appear to be generalists. You are not particularly fast or strong. You lack natural weapons, armor, or advanced senses. While you show promise with technology, you do not have the specialized traits that define true apex predators. Literally added diplomatically, the Astori have studied human development over the past century. Humans are remarkable for quick technological growth and social cooperation, but in terms of raw predatory ability, she trailed off with an elegant shrug. Maya felt something familiar building in her chest. It was the same feeling she got when instructors told her humans were too weak for survival training. It started as warm tingling, then grew into something every human would recognize. Barely controlled laughter. Maya kept her voice carefully neutral. I see. So, you have studied our evolutionary development. Vasti's compound eyes gleamed extensively. Your species shows promise in tool use and social organization, but lacks specialized predatory adaptations we see in true apex species. The tingling in Maya's chest grew stronger. She looked at Lisa and Rachel, seeing the same dangerous sparkle in their eyes. Lisa was biting her lip, trying not to smile. Rachel had the look she got when reviewing particularly wrong scientific theories. Maya continued, her voice still steady despite growing amusement. And you have reviewed our historical Rex Grixter responded with reptilian confidence. Your recent conflicts. Yes, while your species shows tactical innovation, you lack natural killing instincts and physical adaptations necessary for true predatory dominance. That was enough. Maya could not hold back any longer. What started as a soft chuckle quickly built into full human laughter, not the polite controlled amusement of diplomatic meetings, but deep genuine laughter that comes from hearing something so wrong it becomes funny. Lisa joined in first, her scientific training fighting with the absurdity of the situation. Then, Rachel, whose expertise in psychology made the aliens' mistakes even more amusing. Soon, all three human women were laughing with the kind of infectious joy that only humans seemed able to produce. The alien delegates watched in confusion and growing worry. What disturbed them most was not the sound itself. Many species had expressions of joy, but the particular quality of human laughter, it was unrestrained, genuine, and somehow predatory in its confidences. Their laughter finally stopped. Maya wiped tears from her eyes and looked up at the assembled delegates with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Maya said, though her tone suggested she was not sorry at all, I apologize. It is just, well, I think there might be some gaps in your assessment methods. The chamber fell silent. The various alien species suddenly became very aware that something had changed in the room. Lirelay's ancient instincts whispered warnings while Crixta's scales unconsciously shifted to defensive colors. Maya continued, her smile growing wider. Perhaps we should schedule a practical demonstration. The three human women had just challenged the entire galactic community to prove their assessment wrong. The aliens had no idea what they had just encountered. They saw humans as hairless apes who figured out starships. They had no understanding of what it meant to be a persistence hunter, an endurance predator, an adaptability specialist. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had laughed at being excluded from the apex predator list, not because they were upset about being left out, but because the very idea of ranking Earth's ultimate predator species was so fundamentally wrong that it was genuinely hilarious. After all, on Earth, there was only one apex predator, and it did not hunt with claws or fangs or natural weapons. It hunted with tools, intelligence, and the absolute refusal to give up until the prey was down. Maya's challenge hung in the air, like a promise. The aliens had just made the classic mistake that every predator on Earth had made before them. They had underestimated humanity, and humanity was about to show them exactly why that was always fatal error. 3 days had passed since the summit. Commander Maya Rodriguez stood in the briefing room aboard the Earthship Aurora. The ship orbited near Kepler Prime. Its angular practical design looked very different from the elegant curved shapes of alien ships nearby. Maya held the official response from the Galactic Council in her hands. The document was politely written, but basically dismissed humanity's request for a practical demonstration. The council said they appreciated human enthusiasm but saw no need to change classifications based on what they called emotional responses to scientific assessments. They think we were upset about being left out, Lisa said, while looking at alien data on her tablet. She wore practical field clothes instead of formal diplomatic clothing, the kind of military gear that could handle dangerous planetary environments. Lisa was a scientist who studied alien life. The cultural analysis suggests they saw our laughter as a stress response. Rachel looked up from her psychological profiles of the various species. She also wore expedition gear instead of formal clothes. It makes sense from their viewpoint. Most galactic civilizations evolved past what they consider primitive emotional displays. They see our laughter as proof of immaturity, not confidence. Maya nodded and turned on the holographic display, showing the local star system. That is exactly the problem. They have been so protected in their advanced civilizations that they forgot what real predators look like. The door chimed, and Captain Amy Foster entered the briefing room. Foster was a career military officer, 45 years old, with gray hair at her temples. She had the steady competence that came from 20 years of handling impossible situations. Foster had commanded colony ships during the brutal Titan settlement wars. She later led deep space missions into dangerous frontier areas. Foster took a seat at the table. I have been monitoring diplomatic communications. The alien ships have been chatty. Apparently our emotional outburst has become quite the conversation topic, Maya said dryly. Let me guess, more evidence of human instability. Actually, it is more interesting than that. Foster showed intercepted communications on the main display. The Space Elf delegation has been asking very specific questions about human history. Huntress Lirale requested access to our complete military records. Lisa looked up sharply. They are studying more than that. Foster continued. According to our intelligence, the elf has been talking with military analysts from several other species. They are trying to understand why 3 trained diplomatic professionals would laugh at a formal scientific assessment. Rachel set down her tablet, looking thoughtful. That is actually encouraging. At least one species is approaching this with genuine curiosity, rather than dismissing us completely. Maya turned on another display, showing current positions of alien ships in the system. Here is what is really interesting. Since the summit, none of the alien ships have moved more than a few hundred kilometers from their original positions. They are staying close to the neutral zone. Foster observed defensive positioning. They are not sure what to make of us, so they are being careful. Exactly, which gives us an opportunity. Maya turned to address her team. I have been thinking about their assessment criteria. They rank predatory ability based on natural weapons, sensory advantages, physical capabilities, and evolutionary specialization, all areas where humans appear unremarkable. Lisa added, right? But they are missing the most important factor, adaptability. Maya changed the display to show a comparative analysis. Every species they classified as apex predator is highly specialized for specific environments or prey types. Rachel understood immediately. Specialization is powerful, but it is also limiting. A creature perfect for hunting in zero gravity might be helpless on a high-gravity world with atmosphere, while humans, Lisa continued, understanding dawning in her voice, can adapt to almost any environment, use almost any tool, and hunt almost any prey. Foster leaned back in her chair. So how do we demonstrate that without starting an interstellar war? Maya's predatory smile returned the same expression that had worried the alien delegates. We accept their challenge. They essentially told us we are not dangerous enough to be considered apex predators, so we prove them wrong. She showed a new display featuring a notorious region of space called the Proving Grounds. It was a collection of worlds where various species conducted their most dangerous military exercises and survival challenges there. Reptilian Hegemony maintains a training facility on Draken 3. It is where they send their elite warriors to face what they consider the ultimate test of predatory skill, surviving against actual apex predators in controlled environments. Foster's eyes narrowed. You want to challenge their warriors to a survival competition? Not exactly, Maya replied. I want to request access to their facility for a simple demonstration. 3 human females with standard equipment facing the same challenges their elite warriors use for final qualification. Room fell silent as everyone understood what Maya was suggesting. Rachel spoke first. Maya, their warriors are literally bred for combat. They are 8 feet tall, armored, and have natural weapons that can cut through steel, and they have been training their entire lives for these specific challenges, Lisa added. While we are diplomats and scientists, Maya's smile did not change. Are we, Lisa? What did you do before joining the diplomatic course? Lisa hesitated. I was a field researcher studying alien biology. I spent 5 years researching dangerous species on frontier worlds, including predator species. Maya pressed. Well, yes. Someone had to track them, observe them, and occasionally deal with them when they threatened research stations. Maya turned to Rachel. And you, Dr. Stone, what is your background? Rachel shifted uncomfortably. Comparative psychology, specializing in predator behavior. I did fieldwork on various worlds. Various worlds? Maya repeated. Hostile worlds, places where other species could not survive long enough to conduct proper research. Foster chuckled. And Maya Rodriguez, humble diplomatic commander. Tell them about your previous assignment. Maya's expression became carefully neutral. I commanded a long-range reconnaissance unit. We specialized in first contact situations with potentially hostile species. Potentially hostile, Foster repeated. Like the situation on Kepler 7, that is classified. Maya said the classification was lifted last month. Foster pressed. Tell them about Kepler 7. Maya sighed. My unit was tasked with making contact with a species. Preliminary surveys identified as highly aggressive territorial predators. Our orders were to establish communication and assess threat levels, and Foster prompted. We discovered they were not actually predators. They were prey animals that had developed aggressive behavior as defense. The real predators on that world were something else. Lisa leaned forward. What happened? Maya met her eyes. We hunted them, all of them. It took 3 months, but when we finished, Kepler 7 was safe for colonization. The silence that followed was different from before. It was charged with new understanding. These 3 women chosen for diplomatic and scientific work all had backgrounds dealing with the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. Rachel spoke quietly. They have no idea what they are dealing with, do they? And at all. Maya confirmed. They see us as hairless apes who figured out starships. They have no concept of what it means to be a persistence hunter, an endurance predator, an adaptability specialist. Foster stood. I will send the request to the reptilian hegemony. How do you want to frame it? Maya considered as a cultural exchange. 3 human researchers requesting permission to observe their elite warrior qualification process for educational purposes, and when they suggest we are not qualified to survive their trials, Foster asked. Maya's predatory smile returned. Then we politely ask if they have any easier challenges suitable for generalist species, like humans. Foster shook her head, grinning. You are going to give them exactly what they expect. Underestimated humans walking into a situation they cannot possibly handle right up until we do not just survive their ultimate predator trial. Maya said. We excel at ETAs. The meeting ended. None of the 3 women mentioned what they were all thinking. Humans were not just adaptable predators. They were pack hunters, and the most dangerous thing about pack hunters was not individual capabilities. It was how those capabilities multiplied when working together. The galaxy was about to learn why humans laughed at being excluded from the apex predator list. Not because they were offended, but because the very concept of ranking Earth's ultimate predator species was so fundamentally misguided. It was genuinely hilarious. After all, on Earth, there was only one apex predator, and it did not hunt with claws or fangs. It hunted with tools, intelligence, and absolute refusal to give up until prey was down. 6 days later, Maya Rodriguez stepped off the transport shuttle onto the harsh surface of Draken 3. She immediately felt the planet's crushing gravity, trying to force her to her knees. The gravity was nearly twice as strong as Earth's. The air was thick and humid, carrying scents of sulfur and something that smelled like dangerous predators. Red dust swirled in alien wind, and distant roars echoed across the barren landscape. Lisa Park adjusted her equipment pack and checked her scanner. Readings: atmospheric composition is breathable, but hostile. High sulfur content, elevated radiation levels. And she paused, reading the biological scanner. Maya, there are at least 47 distinct predator species within 5 kilometers. Stone looked at the massive facility ahead of them. It looked more like a fortress than a training center built from dark metal that seemed to absorb the harsh light of Draken 3's twin suns. The psychological profiles suggest this environment is designed to trigger fight or flight responses in most species. Even the architecture is meant to intimidate. A delegation of reptilian warriors approached across the dusty ground, led by battle matron Crixter herself. The aliens moved with predatory grace despite the harsh gravity. Their scales shifted to camouflage patterns that helped them blend with rocky terrain. Each warrior was nearly 3 meters tall and carried natural weapons. Evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. Welcome, humans, to the Draken Proving Grounds, Crixter announced, her voice carrying easily across the distance. I confess surprise at your request for cultural observation. This facility has claimed lives of warriors from 7 different species. Maya stepped forward, noting how the other reptilian warriors positioned themselves in a loose semicircle. Not quite threatening, but ready to respond to sudden movements. We appreciate your willingness to accommodate our research. Battle matron, educational exchanges benefit all species. One of the younger warriors, identifiable by smaller size and brighter scale patterns, clicked his tongue in reptilian amusement. Humans are smaller than our adolescent trainees. Perhaps you would prefer to observe from safety. Of the command center, Lisa and Rachel exchanged glances. They had heard variations of this conversation on dozens of worlds facing dozens of species who made the same fundamental error in assessment. That is very considerate, Rachel replied with professional courtesy. However, our research methodology requires direct participation to gather meaningful psychological data on predator-prey interactions. Crixter's scales shifted to patterns Maya had learned indicated surprise, mixed with respect. You wish to attempt the trials themselves? That is acceptable, Maya said. We understand they are designed for your elite warriors, so we are prepared for the possibility that we might not complete them. Successfully, the young warrior who had spoken moved closer, his natural weapons extending slightly, not a threat display but a sizing up gesture. The trials are not games, humans. The first challenge alone requires crossing 15 kilometers of territory controlled by pack hunters, while carrying full combat loads. Pack hunters? Lisa asked with genuine interest. What species? Draken razorbacks, Crixter replied. They hunt in coordinated groups of 6 to 12 individuals. Each one weighs approximately 400 kilograms and can maintain pursuit speeds of 60 kilometers per hour across rough terrain. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. Impressive. How do your warriors typically handle pack coordination challenges? The question surprised the reptilians. Most species asked about individual creatures' capabilities, their weapons, speed, or armor. Humans immediately focused on behavioral patterns and group dynamics. Our warriors rely on superior individual combat capabilities, Crixter explained. A fully trained reptilian warrior can defeat 2 or 3 razorbacks in direct combat, so the challenge becomes avoiding being surrounded by larger numbers. Maya processed this information quickly. Individual superiority versus pack tactics, a classic strategic mismatch. What is the success rate for your elite warrior? 7% complete. The first trial, one of the other warriors replied with pride, though completion times vary significantly. What is considered a good time? Maya asked. Under 6 hours demonstrates exceptional capability. Crixter said the record is 4 hours 23 minutes set by our current champion. Lisa checked her equipment one final time. What equipment restrictions apply? Standard combat loadout only, personal weapons, basic survival gear, communication devices, no vehicles, no heavy weapons, no orbital support. Maya nodded, satisfied. That works for us. When can we begin? The reptilian delegation fell silent, scales shifting through patterns. Maya read as confusion mixed with concern. Finally, Krixta spoke. Humans, I feel obligated to point out that your species lacks physical advantages necessary for these trials. You have no natural weapons, minimal armor, and your size puts you at significant disadvantage. We appreciate your concern. Rachel replied diplomatically. However, our research requires empirical data. If we fail, that is also valuable information. What? The reptilians did not understand. What no galactic species seemed to grasp was that humans had been having this exact conversation for their entire evolutionary history. Every environment they had ever faced, every predator they had ever encountered, every challenge they had ever overcome started with something bigger, faster, stronger, and better, armed, telling them they were not equipped to survive. 40 minutes later, the three human women stood at the starting line of the first trial, wearing standard expedition gear and carrying equipment loads that would be considered light for human standards but represented maximum recommended weight for reptilian warriors. The course stretched ahead of them, 15 kilometers of rocky terrain, dense vegetation, and carefully maintained hunting grounds where pack predators roamed freely. Monitoring stations positioned throughout the area would track their progress and provide emergency extraction if needed. Krixta addressed them through communication system. The trial begins when you cross the first marker. Your objective is to reach the extraction point while avoiding or dealing with the Razorback Pack's standard protocols require maintaining communication silence, except for emergencies. Maya adjusted her equipment harness and looked at her companions. Standard formation works. For me, Lisa confirmed, checking her scanner one final time. Ready when you are, Rachel added, settling into relaxed alertness that humans called condition yellow, aware, prepared, but not yet fully committed to action. They crossed the starting line together, moving at what appeared to watching reptilians to be conservative walking pace. The first kilometer passed without incident, giving humans time to assess terrain and identify potential hazards. Contact, Lisa reported quietly, reading her biological scanner. Pack of 8, approximately 2 kilometers ahead, moving perpendicular to our route. Behavior pattern, Maya asked. Standard territorial patrol. They are not hunting actively, just maintaining area awareness. Rachel studied terrain ahead. Ground is too open for concealment. We could detour around their territory, but that adds at least 3 kilometers to route. Maya considered options with tactical thinking that made humans successful persistence hunters. Or we adjust their behavior pattern to suit our needs. She activated her communication unit on frequency monitoring. Reptilians could not hear. Lisa, what do Razorbacks typically hunt? According to files, they are generalist predators. They will pursue anything that triggers their chase response, but they prefer prey that runs unpredictable patterns. And what do they avoid? Rachel asked. Apex predators, anything that displays confidence and does not activate their prey drive. Rachel understood immediately. You want to walk right through their territory, not walk, Maya corrected, adjusting her pace to something that would look casual to human eyes but represented level of confident movement. Most prey species could not maintain hunt. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. 3 women who had been moving like scientists conducting field research suddenly moved like predators with specific objective. Their formation adjusted slightly, their attention patterns changed, and something in their body language broadcast message that transcended species barriers. We belong here. This is our territory now. The first Razorback pack encountered them at 4-kilometer mark. The creatures were impressive, sleek, muscular, built for sustained pursuit with natural weapons designed to bring down prey much larger than humans. They emerged from cover ahead of women, clearly expecting standard prey response, panic, flight, or defensive clustering. Instead, they encountered something no Razorback had ever seen: 3 persistence predators who did not break stride, did not change course, and projected absolute confidence that came from being species that hunted megafauna to extinction on their Homeworld Maya did not even look directly at Pack Leader, using peripheral vision to track threats while maintaining forward movement. Lisa continued monitoring her scanner, as if presence of 8 apex predators was only mildly interesting. Rachel observed creatures' behavior with scientific detachment, noting their obvious confusion at encountering prey that refused to act like prey. The standoff lasted exactly 17 seconds, then Razorback Pack Leader made decision that would be analyzed by alien biologists for years to come. He stepped aside, the pack parted, allowing humans to pass through their territory without challenge. As Maya, Lisa, and Rachel continued their steady advance, the Razorbacks watched them go with what could only be described as respect. Behind them, monitoring stations recorded unprecedented biological readings from predator species. Heart rates remained steady, stress hormones showed no elevation, and movement patterns indicated complete territorial confidence. For first time in facility's history, apex predators had voluntarily yielded ground to challengers. That was Krixta's voice came through communication. System scales shifting through patterns of amazement. Usual Maya responded without breaking stride. In 300 years of operation, no species has simply walked through Razorback territory. Different approach to problem, Rachel explained casually. Most species probably try to avoid or defeat pack. We convinced them we were not worth energy expenditure. What she did not mention, what reptilians could not possibly understand, was that humans did not convince Razorbacks of anything. They simply stopped suppressing predatory confidence that every human carried as evolutionary inheritance for brief moment. Pack predators of Draken 3 encountered species that earned right to be called apex predator on world, where everything was trying to kill it. The Razorbacks recognized superiority when they saw it, and responded accordingly, remaining 11 kilometers. Passed more quickly than anticipated. Word spread through ecosystem with efficiency that marked all successful predator networks. 3 new apex predators had entered territory, and they were not to be challenged. Maya, Lisa, and Rachel completed first trial in 2 hours 47 minutes, a new facility record by more than hour and half. As they crossed finish line, waiting reptilian warriors greeted them with respectful silence, usually reserved for legendary champions. Krixta approached with scales displaying patterns of genuine admiration, mixed with barely concealed ease. Remarkable, she said simply. Your species' approach to pack predator dynamics is unique. Maya accepted water container from one of younger warriors, noting how carefully he maintained respectful distance. Different evolutionary pressures produce different solutions. What is the second trial? The reptilians exchanged glances. They had expected to spend day conducting rescue operations and providing medical treatment for injured humans. Instead, they faced 3 persistence predators who completed their ultimate challenge. Like casual training exercise, the second trial, Krixta explained carefully, involves solo navigation through deep caverns while avoiding territorial disputes with native predator species. Underground terrain, Lisa asked, with interest. Yes, limited visibility, confined spaces, and multiple hostile species that view any intrusion as challenge to their territory. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. What is standard approach? Your warriors take speed and stealth, move through caverns quickly enough to avoid extended confrontations, quietly enough to avoid attracting attention. Maya exchanged glances with her companions, seeing same realization in their eyes. We're still thinking like prey animals, avoid, evade, escape. They had built entire approach around assumption that humans would need to hide from real predators. They had no idea they were looking at species that spent millions of years hunting in caves, tracking prey through underground passages, and turning confined spaces into killing grounds. When can we start the second trial? Maya asked. The answer came with another shift in reptilian scale patterns, this time displaying what Maya had learned to recognize as beginning of genuine respect, mixed with growing concern about what they might have accidentally unleashed. The entrance to the deep caverns opened before them like a mouthful of darkness carved into the side of Draken 3's largest mountain range. Ancient geological forces had created a maze-like network of passages, chambers, and deep holes that extended for hundreds of kilometers beneath the planet's surface. The air coming from the depths carried the scent of predators, territorial markers, and something else that made the primitive parts of most species' brains scream warnings about entering confined spaces with limited escape routes. Maya Rodriguez adjusted her headlamp and checked her equipment one final time. The reptilian warriors had provided them with standard cave navigation gear, portable lights, emergency beacons, climbing equipment, and detailed maps of the primary passages. What they had not provided, because no reptilian warrior had ever needed it, was any real understanding of how persistent predators approached underground hunting. Bio readings are off the scale. Lisa reported studying her scanner at least 12 distinct predator species in the immediate area, with population densities that suggests this entire cave system is one continuous hunting ground. Rachel examined the cave entrance with professional interest. The psychological impact is deliberate. Most species experience claustrophobia and territorial anxiety when entering confined spaces occupied by established predators. It is designed to trigger avoidance behaviors. Battle Matron Krixta approached with a delegation of her most experienced warriors' scales, displaying patterns Maya had learned to associate with serious concern. Humans, I feel compelled to emphasize the dangers of this trial. The deep caverns are not merely a test of navigation skills. They represent a complete ecosystem of apex predators that have never encountered your species. One of the senior warriors, identified by his battle-scarred hide and faded scale patterns, stepped forward. I am Cave Walker Thector, current record holder for the second trial. In my 40 years of military service, I have seen warriors from 6 different species attempt these caverns. The success rate is 37%. Maya nodded respectfully. What is considered a successful completion? Traversing the marked route to reach the deep chamber, retrieving the beacon, and returning to the surface. Thector explained. Total distance, approximately 8 kilometers through occupied territory. Time limit? Maya asked. 12 hours is standard. Elite warriors typically complete the circuit in 6 to 8 hours. Lisa checked her chronometer. And your personal record? Thector's scales shifted to display justified pride. For hours, 51 minutes though. I should note that was after 15 years of experience in these specific caverns. Rachel studied the detailed maps, noting choke points, chamber layouts, and marked territorial boundaries. What is the primary cause of failure? Territorial conflicts, Krixta responded. The cavern predators are highly aggressive about space intrusion. Most participants either become trapped in extended combat scenarios or are forced to retreat when faced with superior numbers. Maya exchanged glances with her companions, reading the same tactical assessment in their expressions. The reptilians were approaching this as an infiltration mission, sneak through someone else's territory without getting caught. But humans did not become apex predators by sneaking around other predators' territories. They became apex predators by making every territory their territory. Any restrictions on interaction with the native species? Maya asked. Standard non-lethal engagement protocols, Thector replied. The ecosystem balance must be maintained, so permanent elimination of native predators is prohibited. Understood. When do we begin? The reptilian delegation fell silent, scales shifting through patterns of amazement and growing unease. Finally Krixta spoke. You wish to attempt a trial immediately, without extended preparation or acclimatization time? If that is acceptable, Rachel said diplomatically. Our research methodology works best with immediate, empirical data collection. What the reptilians did not understand was that humans had been preparing for this specific challenge for approximately 2 million years. Every cave system early humans explored, every underground hunting expedition their ancestors conducted, every generation that learned to use fire tools and coordinated tactics in confined spaces had been building toward this moment. 30 minutes later, Maya led her team into the deep caverns, their lights Cutting through darkness that seemed almost organic in its density, the passage sloped downward at a steady angle, walls closing in, until they were moving single file through spaces that would trigger claustrophobia in most surface-dwelling species. Contact, Lisa reported, quietly reading biological signatures on her scanner. Something large, approximately 50 meters ahead. Heart rate suggests it is aware of our presence. Behavior pattern, Maya asked. Territorial assessment. It is not hunting us, but it is evaluating whether we represent a threat to its domain. Rachel examined the passage ahead, noting natural choke points and potential conflict zones. Standard cave. Predator. Psychology suggests it will attempt to intimidate us into retreat before escalating to direct confrontation. Maya adjusted their formation, slightly moving from single file to tactical spread that gave each team member clear lines of sight, while maintaining mutual support. Then we do not give it chance to escalate. The creature they encountered at the first junction was impressive by any standard, a muscular, six-legged predator with natural armor and sensory organs, adapted for complete darkness. It emerged from a side passage with confident movements of something that had never encountered a challenge to its territorial authority under normal circumstances. This would be the moment when intruders either retreated or prepared for combat. Instead, the creature encountered something unprecedented: 3 persistence predators, who entered its territory not as intruders, but as new residents. Maya did not challenge the creature directly, but she did not yield ground either. She simply continued forward with steady confidence of something that belonged exactly where it was. Lisa maintained her scanner readings while projecting the same territorial certainty. Rachel observed the creature's behavioral responses with scientific detachment that somehow managed to communicate absolute fearlessness. The standoff lasted 37 seconds. Then, for the second time in one day, an apex predator voluntarily yielded territory to humans. How did you do that? Thector's voice came through the communication system, scales shifting through patterns of complete bewilderment. Different approach to territorial psychology, Rachel explained without breaking stride. Most species probably treat this as trespassing through someone else's domain. We are treating it as establishing residence in our new territory. What she did not mention was the fundamental difference between specialized predators and persistence hunters. The cave creature was perfectly adapted for its environment, but that specialization came with limitations. It had never encountered something that could adapt to any environment, use any tool, and project absolute confidence that came from being species that turned entire planet Earth into its hunting ground. The second, third, and fourth encounters followed similar patterns. Each time the humans encountered apex predators that should theoretically be superior in every measurable way. Each time the predators recognized something in humans' behavior that transcended physical capabilities, the unmistakable presence of something higher on evolutionary hierarchy. By the fifth encounter, word had spread through cavern ecosystem with efficiency of successful information network. The new predators were not to be challenged. They were not prey, they were not competitors, they were something else entirely. Maya, Lisa, and Rachel reached the deep chamber in 1 hour 23 minutes, shattering the existing record by more than 3 hours. They retrieved the beacon with casual efficiency of predators who had completely adapted to their new environment. Remarkable. Crixta's voice carried genuine awe. In 3 centuries, no species has navigated the deep caverns without at least one territorial conflict. Different evolutionary background produces different solutions, Maya responded, beginning the return journey. Most species probably evolved in open environments, where territorial disputes were resolved through direct confrontation or avoidance, and humans, Crixta asked, humans evolved in environments where we had to share territory with everything that wanted to kill us. We learned early that the most efficient approach is not fighting other predators, it is convincing them that cooperation serves their interests better than conflict. The return journey took 54 minutes, bringing their total time to 2 hours 17 minutes, less than half the previous record. As they emerged from the cavern entrance, they were met by a delegation of reptilian warriors displaying scale patterns Maya had never seen. Before Thector approached with movements that suggested profound respect, mixed with barely controlled unease. Humans, what you have accomplished today challenges fundamental assumptions about predator hierarchy and territorial dynamics. Maya accepted a water container, noting how the warrior maintained careful distance while showing obvious deference. We appreciate the opportunity to demonstrate alternative approaches to these challenges. There is a third trial, Crixta said carefully, though, after today's performance, I question whether it would provide meaningful assessment of your capabilities. Lusa looked up with interest. What does the third trial involve? Direct confrontation with the apex predator of this system, a creature we call the Draken Prime, a predator so dangerous that our elite warriors consider surviving an encounter with it to be the ultimate proof of combat worthiness. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. What is the success rate for that trial? The reptilian delegation fell silent, scales shifting through patterns of discomfort. Finally, Crixta responded, 12% survival rate. Of those, only 3% achieve what we consider victory conditions. Maya exchanged glances with her companions, seeing the same tactical assessment reflected in their expressions. All day they had been demonstrating that human approaches to predator encounters did not follow patterns other species expected, but facing something called an apex predator might require a different kind of demonstration entirely. What are the victory conditions? Maya asked. Survive the encounter and force the Draken Prime to acknowledge dominance. Thector explained it has never been accomplished by any species other than our own elite champions. Maya considered this information carefully. Throughout human history, every apex predator they had encountered followed the same basic pattern. It ruled its territory through superior individual capabilities until humans demonstrated that superior individual capabilities did not matter when facing species that hunted in coordinated groups with tools, tactics, and absolute refusal to give up. When can we attempt the third trial? She asked. The reptilian delegation's scale patterns shifted to displays of amazement, mixed with what Maya was beginning to recognize as species-wide concern about what humanity might represent to the established galactic order. For the first time since joining the galactic community, other species were beginning to understand why humans laughed when they were excluded from apex predator classification. It was not because they were offended, it was because the entire concept missed the most important point about Earth's evolutionary history. There was only one apex predator on Earth, and it did not dominate through individual superiority. It dominated through collective superiority that could adapt to any challenge, overcome any obstacle, and outlast any opposition. Galaxy was about to meet that species under controlled conditions. The galaxy was not prepared for what it was about to learn. The arena built for the third trial occupied a natural amphitheater carved into Draken 3's bedrock, surrounded by observation platforms where representatives from 12 galactic civilizations had gathered to witness what many considered an inevitable demonstration of human limitations. Word had spread through diplomatic channels about the unprecedented performance in the first two trials, drawing unprecedented attention to what was meant to be a simple cultural exchange. Maya Rodriguez stood at the center of the arena, but she was not alone. After extensive discussion with battle matron Crixta and review of the trial protocols, it became clear that the third challenge was not designed for individual assessment. It was meant to test the ultimate capabilities of a species' apex representatives. Working in coordination, Lisa Park checked her equipment one final time, her scientific training warring with tactical instincts that kept her alive on a dozen hostile worlds. Rachel Stone reviewed psychological profiles and behavioral data on the Draken Prime, building a mental model of the creature they were about to face. All three women wore standard human military gear, not because it provided superior protection, but because it represented the tools their species had developed for dealing with apex predators. In the observation platforms above, an unprecedented gathering of galactic civilization leaders watched with mixtures of scientific curiosity and growing unease. Huntress Lirelay of the Space Elves, sat beside High Arbiter Zalandra, her ancient wisdom increasingly troubled by what she had witnessed over the past 3 days. Your assessment of human capabilities appears to have been incomplete. Zalandra observed her crystalline form, reflecting patterns that suggested deep thought. Lirale nodded slowly, her violet eyes never leaving. The 3 humans below 10,000 years of space elf military history includes encounters with hundreds of apex predator species. We have developed comprehensive tactical doctrines for dealing with every classification of dangerous creature and yet Zalandra prompted we have no tactical doctrine for dealing with humans. They do not fit any of our established categories. Swarm. Queen Vashti of the Insectoid Collective clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. Our hive mind analysis suggests they represent a completely novel evolutionary approach to apex predation. Individual capabilities are unremarkable, but collective capabilities appear to be unlimited. Battle Matron Crixtus' voice echoed through the arena's communication system as she addressed the assembled observers. Honored delegates, today you will witness the ultimate test of predatory capability. The Draken Prime represents the apex of individual predator evolution, perfect physical adaptation, superior sensory capabilities, and combat instincts. Refined over millions of years, she paused, scales shifting to patterns that suggested profound uncertainty. 3 days ago, I would have predicted that no species lacking specialized physical advantages could survive an encounter with such a creature. Today, I am not certain what we are about to witness. The arena's massive gates began to open with grinding mechanical sounds that echoed off the stone walls. From the depths of the facility, something approached with footsteps that shook the bedrock, each stride representing mass and power that defied easy comprehension. The Draken Prime emerged into the arena like a force of nature given physical form, standing nearly 5 meters tall and weighing perhaps 2 tons. It represented everything evolution could accomplish when optimizing for individual predatory supremacy. Natural armor covered its body in overlapping plates that gleamed like polished obsidian. Multiple eyes provided 360-degree vision. With telescopic precision, its limbs ended in weapons that could shear through steel, and its movements displayed perfect efficiency of something that had never encountered meaningful oppositioning. The observation platform's delegates from multiple species unconsciously moved back from the viewing barriers. Even separated by reinforced barriers and distance, the Draken Prime radiated the kind of predatory presence that triggered instinctive fear responses across species lines. Maya looked up at the creature with professional interest, noting its movement patterns and behavioral displays. Territorial dominance assertion, she observed quietly. It is establishing control over the space before engaging with potential threats. Lisa read biological signatures on her scanner. Heart rate, steady stress hormones within normal ranges. Movement patterns suggest complete confidence in its ability to deal with any challenge. Rachel studied the creature's psychological displays, the positioning, the vocalizations, the careful assessment of the 3 small figures in its territory. Classic apex predator behavior. It is not hunting us. We are too small to register as meaningful prey. It is deciding whether we represent a challenge to its territorial authority. The Draken Prime completed its territorial circuit and focused its attention on the humans. What happened next would be analyzed by alien biologists and military strategists for decades to come. The creature approached with steady confidence of something that had never needed to question its position at the apex of any food chain. It expected the standard response it had received from every species it had ever encountered: retreat, submission, or futile aggressive displays that demonstrated inferior capability. Instead, it encountered 3 persistence predators who had spent the last 3 days demonstrating that human approaches to apex predator encounters did not follow established patterns. Maya did not retreat, submit, or display aggression. She simply stood her ground with calm confidence of something that belonged exactly where it was. Lisa continued reading her instruments, as if the presence of a 2-ton killing machine was only mildly interesting from a scientific perspective. Rachel observed the creature's behavior with detached fascination of something studying an inferior life form. The Draken Prime stopped 3 meters away, clearly confused by the human's complete lack of appropriate fear response. In its entire existence, nothing had ever failed to recognize its obvious superiority. That was when Maya did something that violated every principle of interspecies predator interaction the galaxy had ever documented. She laughed the nervous laughter of a prey animal trying to appease a predator, not the aggressive vocalization of a territorial challenger, but genuine delighted laughter of someone encountering something genuinely amusing. Lisa joined in her scientific training, unable to suppress the absurdity of the situation. Rachel contributed her own laughter, the sound of someone whose expertise in predator psychology made the creature's confusion even more entertaining. In the observation platforms, delegates from 12 civilizations watched in horrified fascination as 3 members of a supposedly non-threatening species laughed in the face of the galaxy's most dangerous individual, Predator. Draken Prime had no behavioral framework for this response. Its million-year evolutionary history included no encounters with creatures that responded to apex predator dominance displays. With amusement, Maya stepped forward, still chuckling, and did something that would be replayed in military academies across the galaxy for generations. She reached out and gently patted the Draken Prime on what might charitably be called its snout. Easy there, big guy, she said in the tone humans use for calming nervous animals. Nobody is challenging your territory. We are just passing through. The creature's response demonstrated why humans became apex predators on a world where everything wanted to kill them. The Draken Prime did not attack, did not roar, did not display further aggression. It sat down, the most dangerous individual predator in the galaxy, sat down and waited for instructions from something 1/10 its size with no natural weapons, no armor, and no apparent evolutionary advantages. The stunned silence that followed, Huntress Lirelay spoke quietly to High Arbiter Zalandra. In 10,000 years of space elf military history, I have never seen anything like this. What are we witnessing? Zalandra asked, her crystalline form flickering with patterns of complete bewilderment. The emergence of something new in galactic evolutionary dynamics. Lirelay replied, her ancient wisdom finally grasping the implications. We have been classifying species based on individual capabilities, but humans do not operate as individuals. They operate as a collective entity that can project dominance across any number of individual encounters. Batel. Matron Crixta's voice carried barely controlled amazement as she addressed the arena victory. Conditions achieved, the Draken Prime has acknowledged dominance and submitted to human authority. Maya looked up at the observation platforms, still smiling with the kind of predatory confidence that comes from being the species that turned an entire planet into its hunting ground. On our delegates, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustics. I believe this concludes our demonstration of alternative approaches to apex predator classification. The response from the observation platforms was a silence so profound that the only sounds were the mechanical hum of life support systems and the gentle breathing of a 2-ton predator that had just learned there were things in the galaxy more dangerous than individual perfection. High Arbiter Zalandra spoke first, her crystalline voice carrying formal acknowledgement that would reshape galactic civilization for centuries to come. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity as an apex predator species with classification, pending further assessment of collective capabilities and territorial range. Maya nodded politely. We appreciate your reconsideration of our initial assessment, though I should mention that Earth's territorial range is expanding. She gestured to Lisa and Rachel, who were now conducting impromptu behavioral studies on the Draken Prime with the creature's full cooperation. As for collective capabilities, I think today's demonstration represents a fairly modest example of human problem-solving approaches. We tend to be more impressive when we encounter actual challenges. The implications of this statement settled over the assembled delegates, like a slowly dawning recognition of fundamental changes in galactic power dynamics. Huntress Lirelay stood, With the formal grace of her species, the Space Elf Dominion requests formal diplomatic negotiations regarding human territorial expansion and interaction. Protocols one by one, the other civilization representatives made similar requests, not because they were impressed by human individual capabilities, but because they had finally understood that individual capabilities were irrelevant when dealing with a species that operated as a single, adaptable, persistent collective entity. As the formal ceremonies concluded and diplomatic protocols began, Maya exchanged glances with her companions. The same thought was reflected in all their expressions. The galaxy wanted to know why humans laughed when excluded from apex predator classifications now. They knew it was not because humans were offended by their assessment. It was because the entire concept of ranking individual predator species was so fundamentally misguided when applied to persistence hunters that it was genuinely every apex predator in the galaxy ruled through individual superiority within specific environmental niches. Humans ruled through collective superiority that could adapt to any environment, use any tool, and outlast any opposition. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand the difference, and, in the growing recognition dawning across species lines, there was an awareness that humanity's introduction to galactic civilization represented something unprecedented: the arrival of a species that did not just want to find its place in the existing order, wanted to establish an entirely new order with humanity at the apex. Galaxy's classification systems were about to undergo fundamental revision, and, at the center of it all, three human women continued laughing with the kind of predatory amusement that comes from knowing you have just demonstrated why your species deserves its reputation. After all on Earth, there was only one apex predator, and it just introduced itself to the galaxy.